First of all, on the previous conferences, we did a lot about talking about history and what happened before and the journey we made from whatever, 20 years ago to now. We're not going to do that today because we don't have time. So even though this has just been a one-way release, we have even a lot more than we presented for 2013. So Thomas and I are already under a lot of pressure because we have content for 5 hours and we're going to show that to you in 2. But before we start, just a couple of things. So first of all, a lot of thanks to Luke for setting us up. So this, you can see all of you that this conference is totally professional made, even compared to the other conferences we have. Everything works here. That's not the case with the other conferences. For the hands-on lab, we just had an incident where Freddie, who's on the front row, had to cough up with $30,000 to get a poor internet connection. So now Luke gets it just for free here. So it's very different. And thanks for Luke to putting this up every year. So we'll start with applause for Luke. So since we're doing the hands-on lab this year, my colleagues who are down here, we are 20 all in all from Microsoft who are going to do these hands-on labs. They asked me to figure out what versions of NAV is people actually working on. And since it's early morning, I would like the stand-up exercise. So everybody who's working on any version of NAV, that means from version 1 to 2013R2, can you please stand up? And this is a trick question because I expect everybody to stand up except for the AV people. So let's pull off 2013R2 and let's the people who are working on 2013 and the previous workings, can you please stand up? And only a few people are sitting down. So, okay, so people who are only working on 2009R2 and previous can still stand up. Oh, so okay, you go back. People who are working on 2009 and previous version and not on any newer versions. I think I lost you already, but so people who are only working on NAV5 and versions before that, you can still stand up. So still some people. Okay, let's go. People who are only working on 2.6 and older versions. Oh, we have one. That's great. So at least we have a lot in common here, and we don't have to go back all the way, which we are not going to do anyway.
Was that the stand-up game or sit-down game you played there? I'm a little bit in doubt here.
Yeah, I think also I lost it myself. So thanks, Thomas.
Just making sure.
So first slide. So this is only marketing slide we're going to show. The rest is poor technology and for developers. The reason why we're showing it that at Directions conferences, we showed this at least 28 times in totals, and that means that we think you're a lot cleverer than this. So they repeated this over and over again, so people understood it. But we are pretty sure that you get the message in here that in and on and not out and off or whatever. So let's move forward fast. So we basically split the agenda in 2, and Thomas and I are going to ping pong around these. So first we'll start with the R2 release, where we're going to look with the Office 5 integration and also how we can extend the clients we have, not just the Win client, but both clients in there. We're going to talk about multi-tenancy, and then briefly about Azure. So now, even though Azure is on cloud, Azure is sort of the color of the ocean, and the lab are in containers, but doesn't matter, still cloud. This is where Thomas comes in perfect, because besides working for Microsoft, Thomas is actually a certified commercial airline pilot who used to fly tourists to Gran Canaria and Mallorca. So So he knows most about clouds and also these new clouds, so he'll be the perfect person to talk about this. Then we're going to talk about some of the enhanced tooling that we have been doing for R2. And yes, we have done tooling, maybe a bit hidden, but we'll show you. A lot of it is very hidden, and we'll show that to you too. And then we're going to do this thing that we'll come back to later. Is Microsoft barking mad? Maybe yes. We'll get back to that. So
might be plausible.
Yeah.
And then we're going to look a little bit into the future. We're going to look at our roadmap for the upcoming versions. And furthermore, we are going to look at the reporting in Crete, what we are developing for Crete. And then we're going to do a sneak preview into some of the items we are working with right now, considering either to put in Crete or in future releases, give you some of our thoughts, and we will really like feedback on those things. And lastly, we want to make sure you all pay attention, so we put in a quiz. So make sure you get all of it. There will be questions at the end.
Yep. Okay, let's get going. So one of the big news in R2 is the integration into Office 365, but it came pretty late in the release, and there'll be a lot more readiness material out there. But let me bring you shortly into what's going on, and the people attending the hands-on lab will get a much deeper understanding of this, but there'll be a lot more on the upcoming release about Office 365. So people who have been in the industry since when NT 3.0 came out some decades ago are used to having single sign-on on Windows, but those of you working on the internet know that this is not the case. So as soon as you need to log on to different apps, you need to enter your credentials all the time. And this is one of the things that's been fixed by Microsoft on Office 365, because actually the application on Office 365 is a lot of different things. It's Exchange, it's Link, it's SharePoint, it's CRM, a lot of other apps, and it's sort of tedious if you have to type in your username and password all the time. So what Microsoft created is the Azure Active Directory, which is a cloud version of the old Active Directory, which covers this. And you'll see in our demos that you have all these Microsoft domains that you have to log in under, but that's not the case. You can also use your own domain to log in by putting up the right things into the AD. And what we of course did in this release is to add NAV to the equation in here. So that was a lot of work, and it's sort of seamless, which makes it tedious for the people who create it, but it's extremely powerful when you use it and you don't think about what's going on anymore. Okay, so I have the Office 365 login page in here, and this time I have the onmicrosoft.com domain that you will also see in other demos. So let me sign in. Oh, I got the wrong. Yeah. Thanks, Thomas. Thomas, you screwed up my demo. Great. Okay. We don't have time for this. Just take another. Oh, okay. Shit. Can you, Thomas, can you log in using yours? We can use your site to do this demo. We tried this 5 times this morning, so now it sucks.
All right. You know what we're going to do? I think we're going to swap the order here. Maybe.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
Yeah, I think we'll just move on with the slides. So yeah, let's see if we can get this working.
So we'll just do a quick swap here and do the multi-tenancy part here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about multi-tenancy and some of the things we did in 2013 R2 to enable the multi-tenancy feature here. And first of all, why did we do this? And the reason we did this was to enable a new market segment. It is not to be seen as a replacement of the business we all enjoy today. That in business is extremely important. This is to enable something new that will grow our business in total. So to do the multi-tenancy, it incorporates several things. There were some challenges here. We had a vision about what we want to do, and from that came some key principles, architecture, the solution to this, and then how we're going to do configuration and management. And I'm going to walk quickly through some of these issues here. So the first one being the challenge, and basically you should imagine a scenario where you have thousands of tenants occasionally connecting to a system. Think, for instance, that you are doing a repeatable solution for carpenters or something. You decide to host it in cloud as a service, and these guys comes in once a month to do their timesheets or whatever your solution now does. The problem is that if you need to have a virtual machine per carpenter and so forth, it's not going to scale. It's going to be extremely expensive to do that. So it's actually we're addressing the worst case scenario of occasional users and thousands of them at the same time. Also, it's extremely important to do the repeatable business. That means scripting, automation. You can't do anything manual if you have to multiply everything with thousands of users. So how do you address this with the architecture? That was the initial challenge we saw, and here's a picture of the 2013 architecture where we have a server, we have clients connected to the server, and inside there runs the application, and that's basically it. Now we do have something going for us. So basically we have this company feature inside NAV that you're all familiar with. Now the company feature, really the name there is actually wrong. It comes from the Danish word regnskab, which basically means set of books. So it's not initially designed to be handling different companies as individual legal entities with data separation and so forth. Quite on the contrary, you can do AL code that reads from one country and company and writes to another. That's pretty bad if you're going to host something in the cloud, that you kind of can do code that do cross-company features there. Another way we could have solved it is by doing multi-instance. Just load additional NSTs on top of each other, each handling one application and one carpenter in my example from before. The problem about that solution, however, is that it really doesn't scale. What you see here is a graph showing a VM box on Azure, just under 4 GB of RAM, and we start adding multiple NSTs into this box. And it scales nicely to around 7 or 8 NSTs, and then it kind of starts to run out of memory, and the performance goes kind of haywire. So that's not the way to do it either. And the last one is multi-server. You can basically scale this by pulling in additional servers, but the cost will be too high to do this. So something completely different has to happen here. So we end up with some key principles here. We need to share the resources. That's extremely important. We need to maintain separation of data. There's no way we're going to do a cloud service with NAV behind it if we can't separate data from the different companies. It should not be allowed to do AL code that reads from one company and writes to another, and so forth. And we need to do something about our management of the entire system. Otherwise, it's not possible to kind of do upgrade or in mounting, dismounting, or whatever, taking things down for service in a automatable, scriptable way. So looking a little bit of the shared resources, that comes with some key principles. First of all, you cannot have any overhead per tenant. Basically saying if we have 10,000 tenants, even an overhead of 10 megabyte or 15 megabyte as a kind of startup cost per tenant turns out to be too big. Now you can have some static overhead for the application itself, but you cannot have any overhead per tenant per se. You can have per users, but not per tenant. It shouldn't make a difference whether a user belongs to one tenant, another tenant, or the same tenant, and so forth. A user is a user, but tenants with no cost. That also drives the principle of having a shared application. That's absolutely necessary because then you can share all the metadata, all the caching of the application data, so forth. Everything needs to be shared and shared and shared. That's the important thing here. And you can see the rest is SQL connection, metadata, and cross-tenant memory distribution. It's all about sharing the same resources for these tenants coming in, occasionally going out again. There's no need for them to have their portion of the cache sitting there in the system and so forth. Now, maintaining separation of data also comes with some key principles here. The first one, of course, being that we need one database per tenant. That's extremely important because then you can basically back it up. The guy or the tenant can get their own database if they so want as a backup. There's no way that we'll get data from other parts of the system from other guys. We did consider having tables set like the company feature, but that again suffers from the problem of interleaving data for tenants, which we really don't want. Another nice thing about this is you get absolutely isolation transactional-wise by doing it in a single database per tenant. Again, we want to protect the application database. That's another thing. If the tenant guys want a backup of the database, there could be legal requirements that requires that and so forth. That can be done because they are not getting a copy of the application. They are only getting a copy of the data tables, which is important. Of course, you can give it to them, but there's no need to do so. Licensing is also something we covered. You can imagine having a license per tenant, a license for the entire system, and so forth. And again, data management, we made that a lot easier. So this is what we ended up with. This is the architecture of the multi-tenant system. So basically inside the server we separated, as you can see on the right side, all the connection things stuff, if you may, into something that comes per tenant. Whereas in the bottom you have the entire application, you have the metadata cache and all those kind of things, they are shared. And the clients themselves do not know they run on a multi-tenant system. There's no way of figuring out whether other tenants are in the systems and so forth. Again, the important thing to key takeaway here is that we end up having one application with one application database and then n number of tenants on top of this. However, when that has been said, it's absolutely business as usual if you don't do anything. And I'll come back to that in a second. Everything will just run as it always have done. What will happen is that the application and one tenant will share the same physical database. So if you don't do anything, you will be running as you always have done and can keep doing that forever. The system will see it as a single tenant in the same database, but otherwise there will be no difference. Now, again, the principles that we ended up with here, shared application, the database split, and then runtime database sync, and let me get back to that one for a second here, is something we also need to address briefly. What does it mean to have a shared application? If I have 10,000 tenants, and I suddenly, like rapid application development, go and change some code in the application, what will happen with all those 10,000 tenants? Well, they will suffer the consequence of your change immediately. Is that a good thing? Hell no. I mean, it's a terrible bad practice to go on a production system and change something of which 10,000 tenants is running. But it's supported. I mean, it's one of those things, don't do this at home, right? We support it, but of course you shouldn't go and do that. I asked this question once, actually a long time ago. how many people or partners in here actually go change production system at the customer side or remoting in and do changes to a customer side? Can you just show of hands how many do that? Yeah, it's kind of almost half. I mean, that's interesting, right? Would you do the same thing if you had 10,000 customers running on the system? And then the hands disappeared. That's nice. Okay. We do support it, though, but I would strongly recommend you not to do it for 10,000 tenants. Another thing that's interesting is when you split the database into two, the app and the data, what happens if you start doing schema changes? Suddenly I add a field in the application. That means that now the 10,000 databases with the tenants need to have this field added, all of them. And let's just make it a little bit more complex. One of these databases is down for maintenance. Now what? And later gets online. And that means that the entire task of modifying schema for the database needs to rely on the server and not with Seaside as it used to in the old days. Because Seaside cannot see all the 10,000 tenant databases. Some of them might not even be present at the point you're doing the change. So when you get to the production system and deploy this change, when you mount this tenant who's been offline, you mount him back again, this system will do the schema changes. This is what we call runtime database synchronization. So it will happen at runtime. It will be done by the server. And we actually improved the logic there to be a little bit smarter than it used to be with Seaside. Now this is the split of the tables, the system tables between the application and the tenant database. You'll see some of them, like the user table in the middle on the right side right now, sits in the tenant database because each tenant will have their own list of users. There's no concept of a Uber admin of all the tenants and so forth in NAV. That does not exist. Each tenant has his own user list. Another thing like, the object metadata table obviously sits in the application database because that is shared across all the tenants. You won't notice the difference when you're working with the system, but this list just shows you how we split these tables. And there's some of them that kind of does this belong in this table or the other one, especially around permission and permission sets. We had some challenges of permission set basically could rely on both sides, and we will clarify that further moving forward. And this is one of the things that's been addressed on Mythbusting and other websites. What really happens when you start doing changes to the system? And this is the explanation. Basically, if you're running business as usual and you go add a field, Seaside will look for a running server, running in the database that Seaside currently is operating on. So Seaside has a connection to SQL and looking into the app database. The app database has a table called server instance table, which lists all the servers that are currently online on that particular database. And then Seaside will contact that server and say, with the tenant you have mounted, can you please verify whether I can delete this field or not? Does it contain data? The server will do that check and return the answer to Seaside, and if it's okay to delete that field, Seaside will save the metadata and we are good to go. The user experience of this is exactly as you're used to, business as usual. In the earlier days, Seaside did the check, now the server does the check, but there's no difference in what you are going to experience when you do this. Now, if you have a multi-tenant system with 10,000 tenants, doing such a change would require the server to kind of enumerate all these 10,000 tables to figure out whether this is possible. And we block that option because this is something new. When you turn multi-tenancy on into the system, you're kind of moving into a new way of working. And there you need to deploy a new solution and not just operating on the running system. And therefore you need to make absolutely sure in front that you can do this change. Then when you mount the system, the server will do exactly the same thing. It will do the check, and depending on the flag when you mount the system, you can either have the change enforced or you can have the mount fail. Mount fail is the default, so you're not going to lose any data if you don't specifically, say I want to overwrite this change. An overwrite, by the way, let me again give you another warning of the not recommended practices, especially if you're going to do it at home. Do not change a primary key, removing one of the unique fields, and then say, I want to overwrite this change, because that means that all records in the table except one will be deleted. Did you get that one? Do not do that. I kind of have to say that because I tried it, right? And that was a bad idea. All right. So multi-tenancy kind of, if you look at the configuration, look at how we manage this, we separate between the two modes of operation. Either you're running in single-tenant mode, or you're running in multi-tenant mode. Single-tenant mode basically means that you are running exactly business as usual. It's identified by the first bullet here, saying the multi-tenant setting in the config file is missing. If that one isn't there, you're running single tenancy, for sure. And that means that the database tag in the configuration file now identifies the single database the system is operating on. Inside there, the system will expect to find the application part and the single tenant part in the single database. This means that we are backward compatible with the config files and mode of operation. If you don't do anything, you just run in single tenancy mode, business as usual, C-side will do verifications, everything is just business as normal. Now if you change it into multi-tenancy by changing the multi-tenant flag to true, then you get some new things. You get a tenant config file where you can specify all the 10,000 tenants if you so want. You get PowerShell capabilities of dynamically mounting and dismounting tenants. You can create new applications or new databases that are completely blank. Just create databases, that's it, and mount it as a tenant. And automatically we will do all the fix-up needed to make it into a NAV tenant database, making it very easier to kind of do development tasks. Let me create a tenant, let's just see what this works. You know, it's extremely easy to do these things. It also means if you're in multi-tenancy mode that all the internet addresses, the URLs, or when you are connecting to a server, you need to specify a tenant ID. It's no longer there's no longer enough to specify the server. You also need to specify which tenant on the server. And there's no give me all the tenants list, because again, that's kind of privileged information, because you do not need to know other tenants running on your server. You need your address for your tenant, otherwise you can't get to your data. And then, of course, the dynamic dismount is supported when you're running multi-tenancy. And we did a lot of updates to the commandlets during this multi-tenancy work. You probably know from 2013 RTM version that we did this, create new company and did a few commandlets, but we did a lot more this time. And some of the yellow ones there is part of a demo I'm going to get. I don't know if you want to get on now, Michael, or I should do the demo of this at this point. Are you ready?
I think we should do your demo and then we can do the...
So I'll do the demo on which I will touch upon some of these commandlets listed here.
So just while Thomas is changing, let me add that it should be obvious for everybody that this is a massive change to both how C-side works internally and also for the server. But what we advise, at least try to do, is that make this as little impact as possible for people who are using normal NAV, just C-side and a single database, because we want you to operate between these one-year releases. And if we do a lot of changes and you are sort of stuck with the old release, we didn't accomplish what we wanted to. So we try to keep us as compatible as possible with the old release, but still we are doing these massive changes. And you see in some cases we succeed, and others we failed, and that's also what this is about today. But you also see other examples where we actually kept old functionality to make sure that you're not stuck on the old releases. Okay, thanks, Thomas.
Sure. So what I got here is a plain demo install of NAV. I can open the role tiler client. It's business as usual. And I opened the PowerShell. I'm only going to use that, but let me just show this as standard demo install. I didn't change anything whatsoever in here. It's just demo data, standard, coronas, whatever. Let me just close this one. Now, what I'm gonna do here is, first of all, I want to show you this experience of this. Let's do a catastrophic delete a field. So I open up C-side, I find the sales header here, go into the sign mode, pick a shipment date as my field here, and let's say I want to change the type. Again, this is one of those, do not do this at home, to an integer. a pretty bad idea, actually. So what would happen now is, of course, this field contains data, and since I'm changing the type, the fields need to be recreated with that type, and unfortunately that's not possible. So if I go with save here, and say OK, what happens now is Seaside will now contact the server. Usually you see the same error message as you used to, but this is done by the server. So the server was contacted, and Seaside asked, can I delete this field with the tenant that you have currently mounted, which is a demo database and single tenancy mode. And the error is the one you used to see. No, it's not possible, so you can't do it. All right, and that's basically it. Now, if you were running multi-tenancy, you would not have this option, because then you will have to verify a lot of databases. If you were running on a system where you're basically not, the server is not on your local box, or the server is not immediately to be found because there's several port numbers or whatever, you can override where Seaside should go look for this. And that happens in Tools and in Options. If you go into Tools option, there's a new field here called Prevent Data Loss from Table Change. This is basically, do I want to do this verification, yes, no switch. If you put that one to no, what happens is Seaside will immediately just save the metadata change, and then the server will, at a given point in time later, do this particular change, but you will not have the verification. If you have trouble finding the server, you have all the fields needed here to actually point out exactly where the server that should do this verification is. If all these fields are left blank, we use this server instance table as I described before. All right, let's leave this one. Now what I want to do is I want to take this server and bring this server into multi-tenancy mode. And to save myself a lot of typing, I actually did some of these commands. But I don't have anything up my sleeves. This is plain blank. I'm not going to use any UI tricks or prep machines or whatever. So I'm going to do all this from scratch. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the server. So we have a kind of a stop command here. I'll copy this one and put it in here. And this is basically just to stop the server. I'm just doing this to demonstrate everything can be done without UI. And the important thing about this is when you do this without UI, that means you can put it into a script. So you can make a scripting file that allows you to do all the things I'm going to do here. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to edit the config file. The config file, I have that one here. Take the config file, edit here, put it here. And this brings me up the config file. You'll see some parameters here about identifying the database, which is quite normal. This is a config file as we know it today. So this is where my database with both tenants and apps and whatever, normal demo install, single tenancy mode. But the multi-tenancy is all the way to the end. It sits here. Multi-tenant value equals false. So let me move that and make it true. Now when I do this, I need to restart the server to have this happen. So I'll just start the server again. And what will happen now, when I start the server is it will now mount the same database. You still have the parameter. Damn. It will mount this database, but only the application part of it. It will completely ignore that this database contains a tenant part as well. So now I have a server running with 0 tenants mounted. So it's a multi-tenancy server with 0 tenants. That's not that interesting, actually. I can ask it to list all the tenants. If I do that, all these commands, there'll be another session where we go more into how to use PowerShell and how to do these things. I'll just say that PowerShell is not an MS-DOS prompt, even though it might look like a normal MS-DOS prompt. But it's actually all these commands return objects that you can pipe into additional commands and so forth. So that's pretty smart. What I do here is I go get the nav server instance on this machine. That returns an object. I pipe that object into a new command saying, give me all the nav tenants running on this particular instance. And when I do that, you'll see actually 2 instances coming up. This is because when I started the server at this point, I have a tenant config lying around which specifies these 2 servers, right? So what I can do now is I can do the same thing. Get nav server instance, get nav tenant. And then I can pipe this one into dismount nav tenant. This is also one of those do not do at home operations. If you do that, it says, are you absolutely sure? Yes, I'm sure. I'm also sure about this one. And now what I did, I dismounted both these tenants. So what happens now is now I have a system, again, as I said before, a server running with absolutely no tenants. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to create a blank database. Let me just, to prove it to you, go into SQL Management Studio, do a refresh here to make absolutely sure that we have no databases here. We only have one database. You see there's no databases here except the NAVDB database. So what I do is I want to create a new database. So of course I don't want to use the UI, so I go in here, and again in the SQL PowerShell, I do SQL command, specify my server, and that just gives me another way of actually entering SQL commands directly from command line. Again, this means that this is scriptable. And I have the necessary things I need here, which will create the database and make myself admin or super on this database. So now the database gets created, the rights get set up and everything, and now I have created a database which is absolutely blank. There's nothing in it. Let's go and verify that just to make sure. If you go here and you refresh the databases in here, now you can see there's NAVDB2. If I go here and look which tables are in here, there's nothing. No tables in here. All right, so with that blank database, let me try to mount this database as a tenant on the system. So what I do now is I go here and I say get nav, I actually have it so I don't need to type it, that makes it easier for me. Get nav server instance and mount this new database as a database on the system. So what this one does, again, get nav server instance means give me the instance on the server. Pass that object into a mount tenant command, specify the ID as tenant2, T2, and specify the database name at navdb2. That's it. Now this database has been mounted on the system. And again, I can go look here. And if I look at the tables now and refresh this, you'll see the system has now created the first set of the common data inside the system. So you can take a blank database with absolutely nothing and feed it to NAV, and we'll start creating all the table as soon as you mount it as a tenant. But you see no companies in here. So the next thing I need to do to complete this demo is, of course, to go and create a company. And that's also a commandlet command. So I have it down here. That's actually one of the old commands that existed from now 2013 RTM version. So again, I can go and I can paste this get nav server instance again into a new nav company on the tenant T2. That was the one I had before, and put the company name for this company Kronos XYZ. I need to name it Kronos for licensing issues, as you know. But when doing this, that's it. If I look at the table list now inside here, I'll see that all the company tables has now been created, so the Kronos XYZ is now in here. And now this one is ready to be used. Now I can go start my RTC client. You'll see that the RTC client comes up and say, oh, I can't connect anymore because the URL I used to use with the single tenancy mode doesn't work anymore because you turned this into a multi-tenancy server. You need to specify the tenant. So what I'll do is I'll just specify that. It's actually just put the tenant after the normal address, and that goes for most of these addresses, whether it's web client or whatever it is, you need to specify the tenant in here. And the tenant was T2, was the name of it, and then I get the company's Kronos XYZ, and then I can connect to XYZ, and now I have a multi-tenancy server with an additional tenant I created out of a blank database. You'll see the company initializing now, and that's it. And that basically completes this part of the demo. Let's see, it comes up. Just to make sure. There we go. All right, so the next thing I'm going to show is a little bit related, but then again a little bit different. Because if you take this model of having multiple tenants and operating NAV as a service, it's very natural for us to put it on Windows Azure, of course. And what we've done is we actually put pre-installed a lot of tenants on some servers up there. And I just want to show you how that looks like if you go into this mode here. So, but there's some challenges to this. First of all, this is a picture inside rack of a tenant. I don't know whether this lighting is all on always. That seems to be a terrible waste of electricity, by the way. But it's pretty nice. That's the inside of a container where you actually see all these racks of these Azure machines. Now, doing load balancing and putting things on Azure as a service, the first reason you need to do load balancing is, of course, if something breaks down, you need to be able to move, the customer access to another machine so they won't get no access to their data. Another thing is the scalability. If suddenly you have a lot of customers coming on, you can just add additional virtual machines to the system and then, have them balance out over these machines and so forth. So load balancing is all about getting to the point where you, instead of connecting directly to a server, which this address, you're connecting to a load balancer which will tell you which of the servers behind the system you'll actually need to connect to. And that leaves some challenges here. First of all, you need to set up service tiers to run it as a service. That's the most important thing to do. You need to think about the scalability. You need to think about load balancing and so forth. We have a picture here that kind of shows the system, how it could be set up. What you have here at the start at the bottom, that is a SQL server, which by itself might be clustered across several SQL servers, so this is not part of this picture. But then we have in this picture two NSTs, two servers, NAV servers, running in parallel. Both of them are mounted with all the tenants that you want to run. So it doesn't matter from a user perspective whether you connect to one or the other. And then you have some clients which connects to one of the ports. In this case, there's 5 published ports. And then there's a load balancer service, which is part of the Azure offering, that kind of directs you to either machine 1 or 2. Now, this comes with some challenges here. First of all, it's easy for the Windows client, because the Windows client is stateful, meaning that, or actually any connection to NAV servers is stateful, meaning that we have a lot of state. So when you are running a page on your RTC client or your web client or whatever, on the server, there's a corresponding set of data that needs to be matched and so forth. So it's not that you have the option that every other time you get a new server. That wouldn't be possible. You need to get to the same server every time to make absolutely sure that the state of whatever you're doing is kept and you get the same connection. Now, Windows Client by itself has a sticky connection. So when the Windows Client opens a connection through the load balancer, the first time it will get to machine A. And now it has a sticky connection with that machine. So that's been taken care of. It will never contact the load balancer again. That's nice. Worse are the web client, however, because the web client actually is a kind of mega connection, do something, tear down the connection. As you know, when you browse things, there's no sticky connection here per se. So if we didn't do anything here, every time we would get a new machine behind the scenes, the load balancer would direct us to machine A, B, C, or D, or whatever, and that wouldn't work. So what we did instead there is the first connection will actually redirect us to one of the addresses of A, B, C, or D, and then from now on you'll see the URL in the browser changing a little bit, and then we will actually connect to machine C or D or A, and then keep the connection with that machine from now on. And web services by itself are stateless by nature, so you can actually connect to any server. So this is how we did the load balancing thing, and I actually want to show you a little bit of how this looks in the cloud. So again, see, now we may be in a situation where Michael screwed up my demo. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, but I just learned you just have to close all browsers and then it will work perfectly, Thomas.
Is that the case?
Yeah.
So we have it here. So let's see if I can change it to me. This would be interesting. That seems to work. So what I'm going to show now is the portal for managing Azure machines in your service. Of course, this is probably a little bit atypical because we have a lot of services running here. But I go to Cloud Services, and the important thing is here actually to not think about individual virtual machines, but think of them as a group, as a service. And we actually set up a service here called NAVTechDays. See if I can find this one. It's here, NAVTechDays. So if I go and look at this service, I'll immediately get some info about what's going on here. So right now it says that I have 5 instances running, or 5 instances configured. One of them seems to be down. So I have 4 machines running right now, and I get some performance counters showed here as kind of the overview. I can drill into different things here. I can go to the instances, and here I see the actually 4 machines instances running as it is right now. Now, as I said before, you can do some really nice and neat things in here. You can configure scalability, but before you start talking about scalability and failover and so forth, you need to make sure that you have a way of separating the machines. Let's say that you have all the machines sitting in the same rack. That wouldn't help then if the power failure of that rack suddenly disappeared, because then all your machines would go down at the same time. So to prevent that, Azure comes up with something called affinity groups, where you can actually group machines together. So first of all, you make sure they are close together in the same data center, but at the same time you're telling the system, these machines, you're not allowed to take all of them down at once. And you'll see there's 2 columns here, the first one called update domain and the other one called fault domain. Update domain basically means if the Azure guys need to install new versions of Windows underneath or whatever, there are 4 groups they can do that in. So they reserve the right to kind of take up group 0 and then update all group 0 machines, while making a guarantee that the other 3 groups will keep running and so forth. The same thing for the fault domain, that they are split cross different hardware, so a single point of failure does not exist for these machines. So if they are kind of losing a power failure, losing a rack, losing something, it will only be group 0 at worst, and not both groups. Setting up scalability in here, I'm just going to do this in 30 seconds, but it's pretty cool. You can set up, time schedule here, looking in within this time, you should consider these scalable options. And if you look down here, kind of saying if the CPU goes above something, you should actually go and instantiate a new machine. And you see you have all kinds of sliders. If the target CPU goes below 17, you can take out a machine, and all these things can be set up in here, so you have kind of automatic scaling. It's actually pretty cool. The last thing you can see in here is actually to go look at the instances themselves, and then ask for a connection to one of the instances. And you can actually see I've done that in front. It takes a little bit of time to establish this, so I did one in front. And then I opened up the management console. So this management console shows that there's an NAV server running here. And underneath here is a new feature of 2013R2, where you can actually go see the tenants. And you'll see on this particular machine, it has about 750 tenants running on this machine. Actually, all the 4 instances of machines you saw before, all of them have 750 tenants running. And do you know why? Why in God's name, with a room of 500 people, will we put up machines with 500 plus tenants? Anybody? No? Okay, I'll give you a hint.
Please guess.
The hint for this is, of course, that you should actually go and try it out. So what we've done is we put up a link here. If you go to this link, and we will repeat it at the end of the session, you just go, you fill in your email, you'll receive an email with access to one of these tenants on the system, so we can get some real tryout here to see what happens if we are hundreds of people connecting to such a server rack. And that kind of completes this part. Now I don't know whether we should go back to the other one or just continue with this.
Let's do the off demo at the end if we have time. So it's pretty simple.
All right. So the next thing out here is whether we are completely mad. And I know, we decided with theme to go here, and Michael came up with this completely silly idea about doing some Mythbuster scene on this, and I think, this guy, you gotta applaud this guy. He grew a beard, That's pretty amazing.
Most amazing, I'm not able to grow a beer, so I tried anyway.
Well, no, I mean, yeah, I think you're doing okay. He bought this completely silly hat, and there he succeeded absolutely. You know, and I think I have to be Adam then, and that means I need to lose 50 pounds, and I couldn't do that in a week, so I kind of failed here terribly. But what we're going to do with this is we've been noticing there's been a lot of social media response to the 2013 R2 release. A lot of positive things, a lot of criticism, a lot of less positive things, a lot of things that we could see kind of trends of us failing to communicate clearly, leaving room for some misinterpretations or misunderstanding and so forth. So what we've done is we gathered all this in a document we are going to publish, and we're going to take bits and pieces from this document right now and kind of discuss it here.
Okay. So first question that we saw was PowerShell 3.0 install is required on Windows 7. So why on earth is that necessary, Thomas?
Yeah. So first of all, let's reveal by clicking that this is actually confirmed. This is true, and the short version is it's required by the management console of the updated version. So we can't get around this. There's a lot of details in this long version here, but it's not, as such, us requiring it. It's the management console on which we depend that needs this. So that's a necessity, and that's just the way it is.
Oh, still no SQL Management Express console installed. That sucks, doesn't it?
Yeah, this is interesting because having this one on would actually make it a lot easier to kind of in a development mode to kind of have SQL Express Management Studio coming on the disk, and everything would be good. But of course, the flip side of this would be we would add additional 600 megabytes to the installer. So if you're going to download a new version, you're at a customer side or whatever, you're not going to use the SQL Management Studio. Now you need to download 600 megabytes extra. And since it is available with 10 clicks, I think, from another Microsoft side, we decided not to include it. So basically, it's confirmed, and this is kind of by design.
Yeah. Oh, this is a question that came from this guy. So, no, it's not one of the Peters in here. It's something else. But I think he wants to be anonymous. But he's the guy with this merge something. That's
yeah.
Ring a bell? So
no.
But he uses nothing a lot.
Maybe he just needs some tooling.
So.
I don't know. Well, anyways. He claims that nothing can be merged, and you know, we did do changes to the system. Of course, every time we do a release of NAV, we do changes. But this time in particular, we did a lot of changes to Code Unit 12, which was more than 8,000 lines. And, you know, we had very good reasons for doing that, especially when we are talking about the individual country versions and so forth. So we've refactored Code Unit 12, and thereby, unfortunately, generating some pain if you have a lot of customizations going on in Code Unit 12. So, the first merge after here will be more painful. Sorry for that, but we believe that moving forward, this was a good move, and it will actually remove a lot of pain moving forward. So I think this one is kind of, yes, it's plausible that nothing can be merged, depending on what you're going to merge.
Yeah. But the benefit, of course, is if you're new to NAV and you have to go into the old code units, you were completely lost for the first year or decade. Now you can actually make sense of what it does, so should have some benefits and not just pain.
Yes. So, plausible.
Okay. Oh, this sucks, yeah.
You can take that one. I'll do the trigger, so.
Yes. We did use an ID, and it's nothing you should do. So this is a bug, and we fixed it.
I mean, this is one of those do not do at home. Never. How many here have tried to reuse IDs and got into trouble? I kind of see some hands. Yes.
So do we.
Yes, so did we. Now, yes. So.
And there's one of these currently in Code Unit 12, but that's fixed in the hotfix rollup.
Right.
Okay, so another myth in here that you need to be on the same box as NET when you develop in C side.
This was one of the ones that kind of was surprising to us, and I think this falls in the category of us failing basically to to give enough information. You saw in the demo just before that you can actually override where C-side looks for the server, and apparently this particular person did not find this option, and no blame on him for that, because we should have been way better of communicating how this works, and now we've shown it to you, and we will publish this document, and it's part of that. So it's not true, but it may be hard to find this information if you don't know where it is. Now you know.
Okay.
What?
Oh, what?
Oh, this one's actually interesting. So what do you think? By show of hands, who think this is true? No, come on, guys. No. Not the last part?
Now you're nice.
It is confirmed, sorry. So I just turned 50 this summer, and Michael is 3 or 2.5 years ahead of me, and we actually both have a Volvo. So the fart part, I don't know. With the hat, he definitely looks like an old fart to me. But
And the draft of this, Thomas actually made me 53, but that's next week. So
yeah, there you go.
So that was actually
almost. It says almost.
Almost.
53,
It says almost. Yeah. Oh, this is another from our anonymous friends. So.
Yeah, this is interesting. It's true. If you kind of just take the report and look at it, it's absolutely true that there's about 80 to 90% of it changed. But the reason for that is that we changed the RDLC format. So this again is a matter of us being a little bit better at communicating. When you do this upgrade, you need to upgrade to the new format first and then do the compare. And then you'll discover that it's not more than it used to be, kind of below 0.1, 0.2% range for the bulk of the majority of the reports.
Oh, this is another favorite. So this is about the famous import of FOB files from previous version. This has been a practice that's been going on and off over the versions, and people didn't like to do this. So let's look at what's in there.
Yeah, so it's absolutely true that we cannot import FOB files from earlier versions than 2009 R2. The reason for that is that the maintenance of being able to import FOB files from version way back keeps growing, and we keep to allocating more and more people to maintain this bits and pieces of code, because we need to do testing, we need to do a lot of things when we have code sitting in our code base, otherwise we'll get red flags all over the place and so forth. So for a various number of reasons, we decided to kind of cut in 2013, RTM, we decided to cut so we can't read something before 2009 and including 2009. So you need to have 2009 version to actually upgrade to something that 2013 can read, and from there on you are good to go again. We can't promise that we won't cut again moving forward, but we will always be able to read current version and the previous version. So whenever you do upgrade your code, a good practice will be to recycle your FOB files through the upgraded version to always have a new set of FOB file. Or as an alternative, do not use FOB files, but use the database or TXT files as your master.
But the good thing of bringing this to our attention once again, because it's valid, that there's this issue in here, that we're actually looking at a new FOB format, which basically should take out all the irritating stuff, that the fact that FOB is binary. We're looking at a completely new format that potentially could bring back this new FOB file compatibility back from version 1 and forward. So we can even make it work on previous version, but that's Thomas will show us some of the magic at the end.
We'll get back to some of
this. This is one of the ideas, so keep bugging us and we'll eventually come up with new stuff that will solve it. So thanks for giving this feedback. Next one, so you cannot change object without a running server.
Yeah, this is one that's based, again, communication and misunderstanding, I would say. If you're in a scenario where you kind of want to connect to the SQL server, do a change, save it, have the schema being updated, and then go without any validation. That's true. You can't do that without a running server. But if you just want to do some code and save it temporarily, or is that the scenario you're going for? I'm trying to figure out the scenario where you want to do some change without doing any validation. That's kind of a little bit strange, because that's a prerequisite for not wanting to have a server here. But you can do that today. What you do is you go into the tools option of Seaside, as I showed before, turn off this data protection thing, and that means that Seaside will no longer need to contact a server, and therefore you can just save metadata business as usual. But it's kind of to me, this is a little bit strange here, because if you do page changes and so forth, you will also need a running server to kind of validate the changes you did. But it's true.
Next one, yeah.
Yeah, you need to be an administrator to use PowerShell. Even though, and that's kind of the sub-bullet here, even though some of the tasks you're doing per se does not require administrative rights. And that's true. And this is for kind of simplicity reasons. We decided to say, you know what, when you use the PowerShell, you need to be an administrator. And there's a lot of reasons for that. The biggest one is when you, for instance, as you saw before in the demo, want to create a tenant. How can you verify whether you have rights to create a tenant on the system? Because the user table where you are NAV super and so forth sits in the tenant table which you're about to create. It's kind of like, well, the only way we can authenticate you is by saying if you're administrator on the system, well, then probably you are good to go. If we had some kind of magic Uber list where you had super user or something, if you're administrator, you know, it's a kind of administrator and physical access to the box. It's a matter of minutes before you are Uber as well. So basically what we did was to say the PowerShell requires administrative privileges, because then we have kind of a pre-authenticated everything in there. Now, what is referred in this post where we saw it was the create a company does not require administrative privileges if you kind of do it from within the role-tailored client. There you can just, as any NAV user with permissions to create companies, you can go do it without being super and so forth. And that's just great. So now you can do it there if you're a normal user, but you can still do it within the PowerShell if you're administrator. And the PowerShell is kind of administrative tool, you need to be administrator. That's kind of the design.
Another good reason is that it's not named PowerShell for fun. It's the power is, you are extremely powerful, and once you're in there, you can basically delete all your database and do terrible things to your system. So we're also putting this to make you aware that you are, now you have power with the system, and
yes.
Use it carefully. Oh, yeah. So during the R2 development phase, we got a lot of feedback that don't remove the FBK format, but we are Microsoft, so we knew better. So
yes. So you guys on this particular one, you guys has been terribly persisting, right? So you know what we're going to do is we're going to bow and say we erred. So we're going to bring something back which will do the same thing as the FBK files. So. We listened.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll be able to bring it.
This is the future. We just take out features and bring them in again. That'll generate applauses. That's fine.
Yeah. And if we're lucky, we can bring it back even before the next release. So let's see what we can do.
Yeah, we have people working on doing this right now, and the format of this will, in all likelihood, be another PowerShell command where you can, point at a tenant or point at a database, select one or more companies, have a local file generated, and later bring it to another server and have that one being restored onto another server. So you can do all the at customer site, bring a file home, apply it to your system. All those scenarios will be supported, both with and without multi-tenancy. It doesn't matter.
So another benefit of also bringing this to our attention is that the new version will be much faster, because the old FBK format was really, really slow. So this is going to be blazing fast compared to what we had. Okay. So we're going to end this section by saying again, as we said in the introduction, that we have all gathered all these and many more in a document. And unfortunately, we thought it was put on PartnerSource at this point, but it hasn't been yet. So we will make sure that happens, maybe even before tomorrow. So you will get the link for this document. All right. Okay, I'll just set up my machine before we move on.
So I'll back up the presentation to where we were. You want to do the Office 365 now?
Yeah. Why not? Oh, nope. So rolling back, so I just sign in using the single sign-on AD login for Office 365. And what you can see in here is the... oh, it's the wrong one.
Switch screen. And you may take off.
Yeah, that works, yeah. I can take off the head. Thanks, Mark. So what you see in here is that it's my Office 365 portal that actually I customize, so and I can even go in and edit it. No. I cannot. I'm in the wrong place. You are on the team side. I'm on the team side. Okay. Let's drop this demo. You can also see in the hands-on lab how to do this. It's extremely simple, and also on your own demo site that you can go and edit and add NAV app parts in there. You can link it to NAV and start that from within the site. And also going back to this barking Matt comment on Mythbusting, the reason why we changed the UI on NAV2013R2 compared to 2013 and even 2009, that we want to look like Office 365. So if we kept the old UI paradigm, we would look like a foreigner, like if you remember Lotus 123 or Lotus Notes back in Windows 95, it just looks strange that you have sort of agent UI in the new world. So that's why we changed the UI paradigm. Okay. I need to move to the next section here. Okay. So we did some changes to the tooling. One of them is not even the RTM release. It was something we did after the fact, and we did it because that's especially the markets in the Far East is getting extremely important for us, but also solves a lot of other problems for us. And the problem right now today is that C-side is inherently not Unicode enabled. So you're stuck with the OEM bytes that you have in there, and you have to set up the proper code page to have everything to run. So we enabled Unicode metadata, that means label and everything. You can basically go in and write your text strings in Unicode. To do that, we have moved the files from the FOB into a new format, a text format that you also know from the transaction export that we already have in C-side. So that's the same format. That also removes the dependency on server-side code pages. But because right now, even though if you manage to use what we call double byte character sets, which is a hack to put in Japanese or Chinese or Korean translations into NAV, you still can only display one of them because it's the server's code page that determines which one you can see. So if you set up the server to be Japanese and you try to show Chinese on the client, it will be Hebrew or something in between. So it doesn't make sense, and you're not able to do several of these languages at one time. And also, again, we kept compatibility with the common tooling. So the current translation toolkits that's also on partner source, you can still use that to do the translation. So one of our partners in the Far East, that Persistent Business Consulting, they are already working on this, and this is not done yet. But there's a conference on NAV next week in Bali, so some of us are going there, where they're going to show the complete thing in here. But you can get the feeling that they basically translate this to this is Japanese. They have not yet translated the resource file, which is why you can see that the accident report is not in Japanese. But this shows that they can go in and select these different countries, Chinese and whatever, and it's all in the same installation. So this gives the benefit that it's much easier to do these translations, but also it enables you to do much faster editing because you don't have to deal with the double byte characters and C-side anymore. You can do it separately. So let's see if I can get this to work. I can show you what needs to be done. Okay, I created a very simple table in here. That's all right. Okay, I lost it. I cannot see it. Okay, so in here I created 4 fields, and I created the metadata caption for each of them, just having the English. And if I go out here and say tools, translate, export, and what you need to do is to go under the program files NAV under the service and create a new folder called translations. And I can serve the person in here. Then I need to put up Notepad. I think I have it in here. File. So one, services, translations, open. And here you can see you have the text format, which also is supported by our translation tool. So I'll go in here and remove these. Oops. And this language 999 is English, and I need to change it. I'll just copy in from my notes over here. Just replace this. And this is a reminder that if it just says save, this contains uniform characters. I cannot just save it as ANSI. So I need to go back and say this is UTF-8 instead. And now you're done. So next thing I'm going to do is I need to go into the RTC to take the Danish language. This is a bug. It's going to be fixed before we do this. But if you do a run table without doing this, you'll just get the default language. Okay, so last thing I need to do is to go in and restart the server. Okay, go back to C-side, and hopefully when I run this guy, I get the Danish caption and the Chinese text I put in for demo in the Unicode. So this actually enables you to do a translation you could not do before, and also much easier. Still, if you what you edit here is the same code page as your original installation, you can still do the translate import and get this text into the FOBs again. So it's sort of transparent with the current tooling if you just stay within the same code page. But if you want to leverage Unicode completely, you can do this. And this also means that in 2013 we enabled Unicode for data, and now we enable Unicode for metadata. And even C-side is not supporting it completely. You're unable to do whatever you can do in a modern system today. Okay. Okay, next thing we did for tooling is the help server. So actually it's amazing that on 2013 we released the web client and also the SharePoint client, and nobody reported the bug that you could not call the help from the web client. So it's possible that nobody's reading the help, but we hope some do. But if we are to keep investing in help, we need to service it also in the web client. So also on top of that, we know that dealing with the old chomp files we had and the translation toolkit and the help toolkit in the past was also really tedious. So we decided to move to a complete new format based on HTML, which works on the different clients we have also moving forward. And it's extremely easy to manage. So it's just a website running on a web server. You can maintain one site. You can run the help server on the customer system. You can run it from home. If you have a lot of customers using the same help, it would probably be more productive to have it hosted at home and maintain from there, because you can just set up the URL to point at whatever help server, which makes it a lot more flexible than the chomp files. And again, it works for both clients and also on the new clients we are going to talk about later in the presentation. So basically it's the ESP website. Different folders in there. You have the help in neutral English, you have the style sheet, and you have the local language in there. You can also translate it to whatever customers you have. It's very easy to customize. You just copy the relevant file to your computer, do the edit using the HTML editor, copy it back, and then it works immediately. Also, navigation was not that fun to do in the old system. You just here copy the XML file with the table of contents to your computer, make the edits, and then you are ready to go again. So this is really something that's a lot more productive than we did in the past. Beyond these things, we did a number of smaller, bigger things. It's never really possible for us to distinguish what's more important for you or what's well taken or not. But we looked into the RDLC editing, and one of the feedback that we got for 2013, it was not that great that you need to buy VS or install VS at the customer's installation. So we enabled that you can also use Report Builder. And the benefit of Report Builder, first, it's free, and two, it comes with the NAV installation, so it's installed on the with the customer server. So you can actually go in at customer side and turn this on. So we, per default, we still have the VS RDLC editor, but you can go in on the two option C side and change it to use Report Builder instead. It's also remove some of the complexity that you have using VS. So it's a matter of taste, and maybe some of the end users you have also can use this for report editing. We're also working on supporting both Visual Studio 2012 and Visual Studio 2013. There's some tweaks we need to do, so that's not in the RTM build as well, but we're working on having them work no matter what version you choose, so you don't have to, if you already bought VS 2012, you don't have to go out and buy a new one or vice versa. Because with the new Windows coming out every year, there's also a new Visual Studio, and we need to make sure that we're not forcing you to new versions all the time. Then we did some enhancement to XML port, and the honest truth about how could we figure out doing that, but for the first time in history we actually used data port as it was called before, and now XML port internally. So if you look in the object designer, we didn't have much XML ports in the past. But now, with all these banking formats that we need to support, we are using it all over the place. And dog fooding is always great, because we found out that it was not as useful as we wanted to be. So So we made some of the properties like field separator, all the separator properties, and the text encoding, which also now supports UTF-8 programmable from code as well, so you can change it dynamically on the fly. And also we figured out that in a lot of cases you want to have an export of a dynamic set of columns, so you might want to cut off some of the bank formats in the end. So we created a new method called break unbound, which actually can break the export in a certain way. And for us, it meant that we could collapse 3 or 4 of the XML ports into one, saving a lot of work in the process. Of course, if you got more feedback, what could you in the future, we can improve it even more. But at least this is something that makes XML port usage really more productive. Then a core design principle in NAV always has been that whatever we put in the app, we needed to display that in the client. And over time, that's been going from a little bit in 260 to a lot. So what most users will see is a lot of information that they actually are not able to use because of they don't have a license to use it. So in the again in the management console, we have make a check mark where you can go in and say, I want to remove all fields that I don't have access to in my license, which means that a lot of things that people are not using will simply disappear from the UI. So out of the box, this is not turned on, but you can go in and just turn it on and see how this works. And this is just the third part. We are working on a lot more of things, how to slim down the UI without going in and customize all the pages in your solution. And last one is it was actually checked in as the last feature in the release because somebody reminded me that didn't you talk about extending the version list? And C said, oh yeah. So we just checked it in as the last minute. Now you can go up to 248 characters. So you're not limited to the 80 that we had in the past. Version list is not a perfect thing, and we are also working on different things to do better versioning in the future. But at least this will solve this small problem for a number of you moving forward. Okay, roadmap. So this is usually where we talk a lot about the new releases and what's going to go on from 5 years from now. But let's do it a bit different. So you all know 2013 was a big shift, moving away from Classic and a lot of new functionality, especially on the platform, and a new web and SharePoint client on top of that. Then in R2 we had the famous marketing words, Office 5 and Azure. We had the cache management and also all the multi-tenancy stuff. And also you will learn a lot about this new language called PowerShell. Sort of when Tom talked about it, I thought that basically we are sneaking all these languages in over time. So when we started, we only had CL. Then XML came years later. But now we're actually putting in a lot of new language in that you also have to learn, which makes, of course, the solution more powerful. So you use C# for .NET accessibility. You need to use PowerShell for admin, as easy if you want to be real powerful. And then I'll get back to you also need to learn JavaScript moving forward to use it as a client more. So Crete, this is not a secret because it's a one-way release, so we already know a lot about what we're doing, and we're already a month into development. So there's a lot of big things in here. I promised devices a lot of times before, but actually now we're pretty sure that we'll make it. So we're creating a device story that will be a development experience out of the box where you can just use slimmed down versions of the pages you already have, or you can create your own device story, building native apps using SDK we're going to provide. And the target is that we are going to do this for all the major platforms. So there will be Android and the iStuff and also our own tablet and phones. So the balance between what we're going to do on phone on the tab is not settled yet, but you see a lot more moving forward. And we're going to do a lot of dogfooding this, so if you have customer projects that you want to engage with us about, we want to know, because we want to nail this and make a really great native experience. Because just slapping the RTC in on an iPhone is not really the answer for this. We need to have the native experience where the swipe and everything works perfectly, and it feels like a native app, like you can buy it on the Apple Store or an Android on phone. Then this license config, I mentioned before, we're going to work a lot more on that to configure your solution down, but also enable you to really simplify some of the UI in the system. So right now, if you want to have the total on the sales order, it's sort of you have to do 5 steps to find it, and it's sort of not intuitive. So we're doing a lot on the app to basically put the information in, that you want in front of you and not hide it behind everything. So that will go a lot of that will invoke a lot of things in the app, but also on the platform to support this. And there will be changes on the UI also in the next release. We promise you that. Then upgrade is one of the key themes in here. We want to make sure that you're not stuck on previous releases. We want to make sure that you can get the regSVN as painful as possible. We want to make sure that you can have the latest hotfixes without much pain, and also providing a lot of tooling around it, which Thomas is going to show at the end here. We're going to do a lot more in Office 365 integration. You just seen the start in here. There's a lot of the setup stuff that's really complex right now that we'll just take the pain off, and the Office 365 platform is growing enormously, also for the other Microsoft products, and we are going to be on that wagon because it's a very easy way to deploy apps for the customers instead of going out and install RTCs on every disk. Reporting. Another big thing, I will get back to that in the next slide, and that also includes BI. We had BI on and off over in the past, using stuff from partners and building ourselves, but without any luck. And sort of the main reason for that, it was not really integrated. It was something on the side, which is very cumbersome to maintain, and also you need to know different systems. So we're trying to bake in the system and also make it an experience that you just have it out on the box and can keep maintaining what you got and extend on your solutions you created. And then in the right-hand side, it says that, the next version is going to be beautiful, it's going to be fantastic, and we're going to add all this functionality. But Thomas even suggested we should just add marketing bullshit, but that was not politically correct. So this is TBD. We simply don't know. So we are focusing on the next release, which is due next fall. That's what we are caring about. Of course, some of us think about what should be after that, but we're not concerned about that right now. It's the list that you have up here, which is pretty comprehensive. So that's the deep secret in here. Creed reporting. I know some of the people would like us to remove RDLC, but it's not. RDLC is the reporting solution from Microsoft. It has its shortcoming, but for a lot of things it's pretty good. And we are also working on getting the RDLC editing experience to be better. You've seen some enhancement in the R2 release over 2013, but there will be more in here. But we also know that for a set of scenarios, using Word can be better, because also end users know how to use Word. They can create templates and are used to do mail merge in Word. So we want to put that experience into NAV. And it's going to be side by side with the current RDLC experience. So you can still keep the RDLC layout and have Word on the side, or replace the RDLC with Word. That's up to you. But we'll still provide RDLC for all the reports, and for some of them you will also have the Word layout. On top of that, we're working on simplifying the report datasets, which are far too complex right now. So you will hopefully have a much better experience doing reports in the future. Other productivity things we're doing on reporting is that if you have end users who are just running the same reports with the same request page parameters, that's awkward that they need to look at the request page because they just want to run the report. So we are baking in that you're able to set up the given user can have this report run with the parameters they expect without showing the request page. So right now you cannot use temporary tables in the report dataset, and we have fixed that so you can use that in Crete. So you can load up a temporary table and then you can just go party on it in the dataset. So right now you have to do tricks with the integer table, but that's gone moving forward. We also have a lot of requests on can we do more server side, because producing all this data on the server and then moving out to the rendering on the client is sort of a lot of bandwidth and a lot of memory on the client side. So we'll enable that you can save your dataset as XML and not just be the white dataset we have today, but something that's hierarchical and takes up a lot less space. And basically that enables you to do other stuff later on, so you can process the XML later to show up in the SQL reporting server. You can put it into Excel. You can format it whatever format you want to, also in a programmable way. We also already have fixed some of the performance issue in some of the current R2 reports, and they are going to be out as part of the hotfix rollout, but we're also looking at different other things that we can do to beef up performance. So we're not done with scoping that yet, and that also depends on the feedback that we get from you. What's the most important thing to solve first? Because we want to nail this reporting story, and we're not giving up. We'll now have the next release and next release and next release. So, but reporting is sort of areas, and nobody will ever be happy. But we'll try to make you happier than you are today. So now to the finale, where we are going to show some really funky new stuff that Thomas cooked together. So Thomas, please hit it.
Funky new stuff that I cooked together. That's kind of an introduction. All right. Thank you, Michael.
No, you're cooking on it. It's not done.
Yes. It's not fully fleshed out yet.
Nope.
Well, first of all, it's not me cooking. You know, we are a great team. Some of them are here also, and we are cooking on a lot of stuff. So that's actually part of your slide, Michael. You want to talk to this one before?
Oh yeah. So these are just examples of. So you can see this is XPS viewer, but because that's what we had to show it right now. But you can see the template on the left over here, and you can see how this would render in Word on the right side. But just a warning before getting overexcited. Now we can do everything in Word. So Word also has its limitations. So if you start doing tables and really complex stuff in Word or expressions in there, Word will blow up and you will not get even an error message. So Word is good for really simple tables that you can pull out, and also for these free flow reports, because that also enables you to do in and do select everything and do a font change, which you cannot do in RDLC. So it has its benefit, but also you can go overboard and sort of kill your whole solution, and also get really bad performance if you're not careful. Okay.
I think you need to log in on that machine. So what I'm going to talk about now is what we call raw lab preview. So this is nothing we can promise that will be in a product. It's just kind of things we are working on right now. It might evolve into something very interesting. It might die. You know, we don't know for now. What I want to share with you also to give you the opportunity of providing some feedback on this. And I'm going to cover two specific things here, because it's apparent to us that these two things, especially about upgrade and then inside the upgrade features or feature set or problem set as such, is of course the merge part. These two things are something which is as a constant pain as we move along. And it's not like we don't share the pain, because we also feel the pain whenever we do things like, hot fixes, or we do sustained engineering, we do, regulatory features. We move these changes from version to version and so forth. So we share exactly the same pain as you do, and we are trying to address this if by any means possible. So the first one I want to talk about a little bit here is what we call self-contained upgrade code. This has to do with if you're doing upgrades where you kind of want to do field changes. In this particular scenario, just some screenshots here, you should imagine having a person table sitting here at the bottom right corner, and in there you have two fields, first name and last name. And now for some bizarre reason you decide that moving forward I do not want to have two fields, I only have one field with the combination of these two names. Of course, it's probably not that valid scenario, but for demonstration purposes here, it actually describes pretty good some of the things that during an upgrade, refactoring, splitting one field into two, merging two fields into one, you always have the problem. It's not only a schema change you need to do, you also need to apply some code while doing this. And what you saw before in the multi-tenancy demo was scenarios where databases come online through this mount command at a later stage, and suddenly now what? Can you run an upgrade toolkit? You really can't, and how do we go about this? And we put a lot of thinking into this, both Michael and I and all the team members. How can we address this? And what we come up with so far, and please, by all means, send us mails, give us some feedback on this, is at the point where you're doing this change of now renaming or adding another field, removing the other two, this is exactly the point where you know how to transition yourself from one point to the other. And why not take advantage of that and then enable you to do something about it at this point? So you should imagine having a scenario where you click this, I need upgrade code. And what will happen then is the system will automatically generate two tables now. First of all, you get the 56,001 in this case to go party on, but you get kind of a shadow table which now will contain the old data. You see it behind here, 104,000. It'll get a random number. It's not to be you don't need to worry yourself about that. But what will happen then is now you can go design your new table, and then later it's possible to add some code in a special code unit in code unit 1, where you kind of link these two together as part of some upgrade code that should run if the system detects that the schema of this database is kind of behind schedule, so to speak. So in this case, we are linking, you can see the old version is now identified as 104,000 for this 56,001. And that allows you to write some pretty cool code. Now you can do an upgrade step method here, which then, where you have access to both tables. Kind of automatically, without, you get full platform support for enumerating the table. You can see that's done in code here. So you transfer fields from the old table, and then you do the magic with the new and insert it into the person table. And when the platform can run this code, it will automatically delete the temporary tables, so to speak, and you're good to go, because this is part of an upgrade step only to be run when you upgrade this server. So this is kind of, if you imagine you'll be able to do these, and you'll be able to do them, kind of from one version to the next version and kind of add them together. So if you skip version, it will run all the code paths to actually upgrade your database to the final version. This is one thing we are thinking about to make it more easy to do these upgrades. And please provide feedback if you like. Now, another thing, which is, I love this statement. A key strength is blah, 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 and then a weakness is exactly the same. One reason that, I love it is because I wrote it. Isn't that great? No, anyways. The problem here is that NAV has always been built on doing, raw source code modification, and anybody can do anything at any point, anywhere. That is super powerful. It means that you can go into a system, you can do something immediately without a big learning curve and so forth. But as you're all aware, the unfortunate flip side of this is, of course, when you get to the upgrade part, you run into a lot of pain and problems if you haven't been very disciplined about what you did. So we've been thinking a lot about how can we address this, and this is by no means any start of a plan to move away from source code modification. We are not going to remove that for sure. But we might offer something in addition. So you get the choice of saying, to alleviate pain in the future, I want to move away from this source code modification unless absolutely needed. And all the normal cases, I can use something else. And this something else is basically something that we can find on this list. First of all, the problem about merges in general is if you do these textual merges by just looking at the TXT files, you will always get kind of conflicts when you add things at the end. When two people add things at the end, which one goes first and so forth. And you need knowledge around the model to actually decide that these two, it doesn't matter. It's not a conflict at all, because when you're adding this particular sub thing to this element, it doesn't matter the order, so there's no conflict, whereas other elements, it might be a conflict. So if you can imagine a tool doing the merging where it knows about the model, things like you are adding an additional string to a caption ML string. You're not replacing the entire thing. No. It's an addition of this particular bit of the string. And the system would know that because it knows the entire model. So it's not just text. We did some experiment internally of some of the upgrade and updates we did, and we can actually get to around 80% of all our merges being done automatically by just knowing the model versus just having a textual merge. It's a huge benefit to do this. Then imagine another world where you kind of have a tool, and this is something that we're working on actually building, where you have your source file, you have another source file, and given these two source files, you extract the delta, the differences there. Not as a textual thing, but kind of as these model elements has been added, deleted, modified, this thing happened, this code changed after here and there and so forth. And then you have this delta file that you can then turn around and apply to another code base. You might have some conflicts, but again, in most cases, since it's model changes, it should just go in with no problem. This is exactly what we need ourselves. When you guys kind of find a bug, we do a hotfix. So we do a hotfix on 2013R2, but now we need to take that thing we did and apply it to 2013 RTM and then to 2009 as long as that's in service. So we see this pain constantly, and probably you as well. Having a tool that can extract what you did and reapply on another code base would be extremely powerful, and we are definitely going about trying to solve and actually build such a tool. Another thing is reversing the dependencies. This is kind of coming from an architectural angle. One of the things that I kind of always annoyed me about NAV is if I want to, let's say, customize the customer table or the customer functionality, I need to go to the customer code unit or table and do the modification there. And that's kind of wrong. How come I cannot have a on-the-side thing where I tell the system, I want to customize the customer table, and I expect it to have the following 3 fields, because that's the fields I'm going to use in my logic. Whether other things had happened to the customer table, I don't care about. And I want to hook into this particular function, and I expect this function to have these 2 parameters. If a 3rd parameter later is added, I don't care, as long as my 2 parameters are there. And this is the functionality I want to add to the customer thing, without even touching the customer object itself. That means that you can apply and then later actually remove, which is also interesting, your customizations without having to disturb the original object. You can add other concepts like data storage onto this. My customizations needs to add another field. Please, platform, figure out where to store it. I don't need to know. As long as when I do my code, the field is there. That would open up things like scenarios where you have an app model. You can install an app, try it out for 2 weeks, and decide, nah, that's not good, and you can uninstall it again. And the storage for this particular field or whatever you did will go away, because maybe it's sat in a linked table or a table we join in, so it could just be deleted. There's a lot of things we can do around these things, and this is something that we're going to work with. But reversing the dependencies is kind of the beginning of this. You do not need to modify the source or the target of your customization to actually do something. Predefined hook points is another thing. We had some discussions with some of the MVPs on this, where the discussion is basically, do we really need this raw source code modification? This also ties into some of the refactoring of Code Unit 12 we did. Yes, you need raw source code modification if you have 8,000 lines in one go, right? Because you have no way of hooking into that. But if it turns out you're doing something new, doing a new vertical, and you actually structure your things into method that does things that are very small, being able to hook into any method. Let's say you got a trigger called onBefore call to this method, and there you can actually modify the parameters, you can run code, you can tell it to skip the original method if you so choose, or you can have an on after this method had run where you can mangle with the return value of such a function. How far would that take you? And this is some of the things that we are investigating right now, looking at some parts of our own application, because that would bring us away from the source code modification in a lot of scenarios. Not all of them, and we are not removing source code modifications, but doing this would definitely ease the upgrade tremendously, because now things can be done in an automated fashion. And I want to show you something that we built here. So it's going to remote into a machine which sits at Microsoft headquarters. Just try this connection. You need to log in there, Michael. You know what? I'm going to do that from the other machine because that one is readily available. So I'm going to do it over here. All right, so what I got here is one of my developer boxes, and I have a full copy of our source code for the entire app here. Just to look at it here, you can see here's all the text files. Another thing that we are considering is definitely to move to kind of a textual-based repository to enable source control and all these kind of things. But this is all the text files that sits in the W1 version, and probably some test cases and some other stuff that we just put into this directory for this demo purposes. So you see there's 5,365 files in here. Now, what we then did is we wrote a small C# program. It's not that small anymore, but it started as a small one, which is totally independent on anything else. So this is just passing and running, looking at these text files. And what it does, let me try to run this. See what happens when you do that. So what happens is it takes the directory you saw before and it loads up all the text files that sits in that directory. Now, it just doesn't load up the text file. It actually goes in and passes all the text into elements and sub-elements and properties and everything. So now we know exactly how this text file is structured. We know there are tables. Table has fields. Field has properties like, number, ID, name, whatever. And then we take all the code at the end and we compile all the code into all the statements, and expressions and type info and all these kind of things. Now we have everything in memory, and you notice the speed that was done here. We put it on screen, I think. So you have up here the entire pass of this thing was done in 6.7 seconds. So we read in all these 5,300 files, passed them up, looked at the code, did everything in 6 seconds. Now, this enables us to do, you can imagine doing this, and then do the same thing for another directory in another 6 seconds. And now we can take these two trees in memory and start figuring out what are the differences here, what happened, produce output, and so forth. We would also be able to do extended cross-referencing. We know everything that goes on in all this code now. So you can take any single identifier in here and say, this field, where is this used? And you'll get all the cross-references. This field is used in all these pieces, all these places, and so forth. Another thing you could imagine, which I'm pretty sure we'll do, is to take all this information and publish this as virtual tables. So that gives you the capability of, after bootstrapping the system with this 6-second one-uptown, now you have access through AL to go party on all this information. Or you can do .NET interop and do this in C#. And just to give you an idea of what goes on here, one of the things displayed were, for instance, the most 8 common elements used on the system. And I know this is probably going to be a little bit ugly C# code, but you basically go and do one link statement here, with the error here would kind of go all the elements, get all the elements, and for them, group them by something, and then select and do, and blah, 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 blah. And in one line, you got the 8 most used elements and so forth. So there's a lot of things you can do, whether you do C# or you do AL or whatever. And it all starts with the scenario of let's build a tool that can actually produce these deltas and diffs by knowing the model. I have nothing more at this point to show. I know it's not that interesting, the demo itself, but I think the perspective of some of the thinking that Michael and I have been doing around these things will reach way into the future with some of the TBD and to be inserted here text will be features coming out of some of this. Yes?
Yeah. And if somebody thinks, oh, this could be the start of a new compiler, they thought the right thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we skipped one demo and the client accessibility.
Yeah, you want to go back to that one?
Yeah.
All right.
I'm just going to show this real brief. So I'm going to do this without the slides. So basically in 2013 we had client accessibility, what is only for the Windows client, and also you needed to deploy stuff on each client to have it to work. So we wanted to also support the web client and do something common across web and Vim, and also for the new device clients that we're doing. So we created a new world in parallel with the old WinForms extensibility model, which still works and still will continue to work moving forward. So the new model is different because you don't have to deploy things to the client because it's the controls are all written in JavaScript. And the only thing you need to do in C# is to basically go in and declare the events and functions that you want to use eventually. But that's only for the purpose of C-side figuring out what to do with it. So in this example that Freddy created, you have the control in here, you have the add-in ready event, which is something we define that's common across all the controls, it's best practices. And there's a method called hello that we have implemented. And you can see the void on the hello function. That's on purpose because this is done async. Everything runs in the browser. You're not waiting for anything, so you cannot call the browser and then wait for something to happen and return to the server. So this is returned immediately, even though the function is not really executed on the client, which is an important thing when you try to design things on it. So basically you do this C# project to have the interface ready, and then you can use it from AL. The next thing you should do is you do the JavaScript. In this case, you get a resource base of string that's passed in, and then you display the picture and the text string in here. So that's pretty forward, and everybody who knows how to do JavaScript can do this really fast. This always comes together in a manifest where we basically declare all the objects. So we have pictures of Freddy and Thomas and I in here. You basically have pointers to the script that you want to put in, and then you have hints at the bottom. So you have these 4 request heights, widths, vertical stretch, and horizontal stretch. That's what you can do. So once you have these artifacts, you basically zip the manifest together with the resource file, everything, and then you go to the RTC. There's a control add-in page. You go in and enter your control and the ID, and then you go in and import the manifest by using import format up here. And then, of course, you have to place the DLL in the add-in control directory to make Seaside discover it. But then, after that, you're ready to go. And just, if I move fast into Seaside, I have modified the customer card, so I made a test field in here, which is basically points to control, and if I go down on the bottom, I have my control add-in ready, so the event I had from before. And now I basically call the hello method with Thomas in it, and just to prove that it's not bogus, I will try to have a web client. Hope it will not start something else this time. I go to my customers. Go in here. And we have Thomas in here. So
there you go.
Again, really powerful, dead simple, and very easy deployment. So we believe this is a clear improvement from the old version. And if you want to stick to that, you can still keep your con code. You don't have to upgrade it. But just a little warning in here. You might want to look at our chart control in NAV and say, oh, that must be the best reference there is. But it's not, because we made something really dirty. We hard-coded in the client that actually these are two controls. And if somewhere deep in the code said web, you take this control, and when you take this. So we have the old control and new control. But fortunately, we sort of covered this, so you're not able to do that. You have to follow the new model, because that's what we also want to do moving forward. So don't look at the current control. Look at our examples instead. That's pretty good to look at. So.